Hello, beautiful souls. I'm your host, Shakira Moore, and welcome to another episode of the Perspective Matters podcast. For this week, I'm going to keep things fun and light. As I've said before, personal development doesn't always have to be so serious. We can have fun. We absolutely can have fun while we learn, while we grow, while we strive to be better people or be better beings. So with that said, I'm going to go straight into our proverbs. I'm sharing 4 proverbs this week, and I had a good time choosing the proverbs that I'm gonna share with you. I did have a good laugh because some of them are just too funny, and I just marvel at how expressive Jamaicans are. I don't know who came up with these proverbs. It's just fun. And I just love how expressive we are, how creative we are, the common sense wisdom that we embody, and the fearlessness with which we communicate. And I'm here for it. So the first proverb I'm going to share with you is, monkey must know when go put in tail before he order trousers. Monkey must know when go put in tail before he order trousers. The translation: the monkey must know where he's going to put his tail before he orders the trousers. The monkey must know where he's going to put his tail before he orders the trousers. And the explanation is, be clear about how you're going to carry out a project or a task before you initiate the process. And one must know oneself before doing what others are doing. So the explanation is, be clear about how you're going to carry out your task or your project before you initiate the process. And one must know oneself before doing what others are doing. I had a good laugh when I read that proverb, because just the idea of having to figure out where a monkey would put its tail if it was to wear pants, I was like, oh, that could be an interesting time for that creature, right? That's just the visual. It just was too funny. This proverb is important to take note of, because there are times we'd want to take on projects, take on tasks, say yes to things without really considering the implications of the yes. And depending on where you are in your journey, whether you are an entrepreneur, as a fledgling entrepreneur, or as an established business owner, or you're an employee, whatever your path is, you're a student, you're a homemaker, whatever your path is, I'm certain there have been times or there are situations that arise where you say yes without quite understanding what you're saying yes to. And I know there are thought leaders who applaud taking risks. I remember Sir Branson saying once that he said yes, and it was after he said the yes, he figured out how he was going to make the yes a reality. And it is great to be able to push yourselves beyond your comfort zone and to really push the boundaries of what you think or believe or know that you can do. But there is value in taking a pause. There is value in assessing whether or not you have any right to even say yes to the thing. Because think about it. That tail the monkey has, it's not going anywhere. It's attached to his body. It's a part of his makeup. So for him to wear trousers, the tail has to be accommodated. And the idea of stuffing the tail in the trousers is not the most ideal solution, because the monkey uses his tail to move about. If he's climbing, the tail is a part of his body that assists him in climbing and moving from tree to tree. Similarly, when we say yes to things, we are exposing ourselves to opportunities, to challenges, sure, but is there a likelihood that there is a part of us that is going to hinder us from really saying yes? Is there an insecurity? Is there a limitation? Is there a lack of something, whether it is the experience or the knowledge? Is there something that is going to make saying yes hard, or make carrying out the action that should follow the yes hard. So I just want us to reflect as we go on our journeys that it is good to say yes. It is good to be open to challenges. It is good to take risk. It is good to push the boundaries, to really push the limit. But just remember that whenever we say yes to something, we're saying no to something else. And while it is good to say yes, be cognizant of the totality of the yes. What exactly are you saying yes to? Can you really say yes and deliver? Or are you going to say yes and put yourself in undue stress, unnecessary hardship? So I just want you to bear that in mind as you go throughout your journey on this thing we call life. So the second proverb I'm going to share with you. I really had a good laugh when I found this proverb because I was like, Jamaicans can be so explicit. There is little left to the imagination with whatever it is they're trying to communicate. And we can be so fun at times. And I absolutely love it. So this second proverb goes, if cow did know how him throat will tan or how him body part, him wouldn't chance pear seed. If cow did know how him throat will tan or how him body part, him wouldn't chance pear seed. The translation is, if the cow knew the size of his throat or his behind, he wouldn't take a chance eating a pear seed. If the cow knew the size of his throat or his behind, he wouldn't take a chance eating a pear seed. The explanation? We do not always realize our limitations. The explanation? We do not always realize our limitations. Now, apart from having a good laugh, this proverb was really a good one to reflect on as well. And it kind of ties in to the theme of the first proverb that I shared with you, in that we are so willing to take on opportunities that will stretch us and push us to grow that we tend to forget what our limitations are, or even recognize that we still have limitations. And yes, it is good to want to explore and see what you can accomplish when you say yes and when you take on something that is completely outside of your abilities or skills or what you think you can do. It's really good to do that because we are unique beings, and I like to remind us that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. So the spiritual part of us has no limit, but the physical part does. So we exist in contrast. And it is good to be mindful that we have limitations. And I know there is a sentiment that limitations are a bad thing, or we shouldn't look at ourselves in that manner because then we restrict our experiences. And yes, that is absolutely one way to look at it. But the other way to look at it is when you know your limitations and you know where the line is, the decision becomes easier, meaning you can decide to stay within the line or decide to push the boundary. There is no ambiguity in your position. You don't have to wonder if you can or if you can't. You know, the decision becomes, am I still going to try? Am I still going to push? So that to me has more value, because when an opportunity presents itself, you can decide whether or not you're going to take this challenge on, being fully aware of what your limitations are. And that will help you to better prepare yourself to really rise to the occasion. Because there are some of us who walk around kidding ourselves because we really don't know who we are and we don't know what our limits are. We don't know what our capabilities are because we haven't spent enough time with ourselves. We haven't done the reflection. We haven't done the introspection. So when opportunities come at us, we're like a bobblehead. We're just spinning left and right because we don't know what to do. When you are solid in who you are, when you know beyond the shadow of a doubt who you are, what you can do, what you want to do, the decision-making process becomes that much easier. Now, the cow, if he knows the capacity of his throat and he knows the capacity of his behind, then the decision to eat the pear seed is simple. He's either going to do it or he's not going to do it. And he understands there are implications with either choice. You don't do it, then it's an experience that you just have not partaken of. If you do it and your throat and behind don't have the capacity to manage the pear seed, then that cow is going to be in for an interesting time, putting it mildly. Similarly, if you don't know your capacity and you take on something that is completely outside of your scope, then you are going to be in for a whale of a time, and that's putting it mildly. But if you know what your limits are and you know the implications of saying yes or saying no, then the decision becomes easier. So my encouragement to you is recognize that you are, in fact, an amazing spiritual being inhabiting a physical body as you go throughout this human experience. And you have limits. And there is nothing wrong with it because this is just how it is. It is embracing our limitations and being willing to push past them if we think there is value in doing so. So as you go on throughout your journey, as you go through the rest of this month, the rest of this year, as you go through the rest of your lives, and you are faced with choices, opportunities make their way to you, and you have to decide whether or not this is something you can do, knowing who you are beyond the shadow of a doubt, knowing what you can do, knowing what you want to do, will make the decision making process that much easier. The third proverb I'm going to share with you. This one, I had challenges with this one, and I'm going to talk about the challenges I had with this proverb because the meaning is quite obvious and I don't like to go for the obvious. So here's the third proverb. When you go a jackass yard, you know for chat about him big ears. When you go a jackass yard, you know for chat about him big ears. And the translation is, when you go to the house of the jackass, you must not talk about his big ears. When you go to the house or the home of the jackass, you must not talk about his big ears. And the explanation, don't criticize others in their presence. The explanation, don't criticize others in their presence. You know, I had to call my mom just to run these proverbs by her because people will take offense to anything, even when offense is not intended, people will find it. So when I read this proverb to her, my first reaction was, okay, so we're not supposed to criticize a person in their presence. Are we supposed to criticize them when they're not around? Like, I really struggle with that proverb because my thing is, why would you want to criticize somebody full stop? Now, if I'm going to be literal minded and think about someone inviting you into their home and you're in their home, you're in their space and you're going to criticize them, that to me is just flat out rude and that makes you a horrible person. Now, taking that proverb and applying it to any context whatsoever, you can see something that is obvious about a person. And depending on the perspective, it might be a flaw to you or it might be a unique trait to someone else. Like a donkey or a mule or a jackass has really long ears. You can't miss the ears. Now, that could be a flaw to somebody else. It could be a unique identifying feature for another person. Regardless, the proverb is saying, don't criticize in their presence. And my thing is, would you criticize them behind their back? Is that what we should infer? Don't criticize at all. And I know that's easier said than done, depending on the environment you grew up in, depending on how you were socialized, depending on your genetic makeup, depending on a lot of factors, or just who it boils down to, or who you boil down to full stop. It's easy for some people to criticize and for others it's not so easy. My point is, tact is important. being tactful, being kind is what I'm going to take away from this proverb. Don't criticize somebody in their presence. Don't criticize them behind their back. If you think what you have to say is of value to them and it is going to build them up and not tear them down, your criticism is constructive, then find a kind way to express it. You know, I have several mantras, one of them being, it is better to be kind than to be nice. So if it is something physical that the person can address, then find a kind, tactful way to share it with the person. If it is a character trait that the person needs to work on, again, find a kind, compassionate way to share it. Bearing in mind that it is the person's prerogative to accept what you share or reject it. And we're all entitled to our opinions. It doesn't mean that we always have to share them. Sometimes you can see something and just keep it to yourself. I love the fact that Jamaicans have a saying for every situation, because as I'm sharing this proverb with you, another one comes to mind. See, I'm blind, hear, and deaf. You see something that you think is worth critiquing, but really, is it worth critiquing? Could you just see it and pretend not to see it? Could you hear it and pretend not to hear it? Unless you are certain that the feedback you're going to give is really going to add value to that person, it's really going to have a positive impact on that person, it's going to improve their day rather than make them feel small and insignificant and less than and unworthy. If you can guarantee that, give your feedback. But please be kind and considerate and compassionate with your feedback. I know there are some of us who are of the belief that I'm speaking my truth, and if the truth hurts them, too bad. May I share my truth? And I just so it go. So I can be as blunt, I can be as cut and dry as I want to be because I the truth. No, I disagree. You may be speaking your truth. You may be speaking the truth. Doesn't mean that you have the license to be unkind. It does not mean you have the right to be rude. You can speak your truth. You can speak the truth without hurting someone else. Because bear in mind, the roles could be reversed. And somebody could have that very same sentiment towards you. And they could say, well, may I tell her? And if she want vex a fear business, they don't have to care about your feelings. They don't have to spare your feelings. So just be mindful that as you have your interactions, whether it is with your friends, your family, your colleagues, your significant other, there will be instances where providing feedback is necessary. But just remember, be kind, be considerate, be compassionate, because that is what you would want if the roles were reversed. The fourth and final proverb that I'm going to share with you this week is, Mandan Cross River, nothing cause alligator same mouth long. Mandan Cross River, nothing cause alligator same mouth long. The translation is, if a man is not finished crossing the river, he shouldn't curse the alligator about his long mouth. If a man is not finished crossing the river, he shouldn't curse the alligator about his long mouth. And the explanation is, don't curse those who have the power to hurt you or hinder your progress. Don't curse those who have the power to hurt you or hinder your progress. Timely reminder. We need people. We are social beings. Or some of us who are going to put our hands up and say, nope, I'm a loner. Nope, you're not talking to me. I'm an introvert. I don't even like people. I get it. As a fellow introvert, I absolutely get it. But the reality is we cannot do this thing called life without people. We need the connections. We need the interactions. As emotionally exhausting as it can be at times, as physically exhausting as it can be at times, we do need people. That's why we have the saying, no man is an island, no man stands alone. we were wired to function in a community. That's how the first set of human beings functioned. They lived in tribes, they lived in clans. That's how they were able to stay safe from the elements and from other creatures that wanted to have them for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Even though the society has evolved, even though we have evolved as human beings and we no longer live in caves, we now live in skyscrapers and different kinds of dwellings, some needs don't change. So as you navigate life, as you build your relationships, as you make your connections, as you network, whether in the capacity of an employer, employee, as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, as a student, whatever capacity, whatever role you find yourself in, as you engage in these interactions, be mindful of how you conduct yourself. The proverb says, "Don't curse those who have the power to hurt you or hinder your progress." Now, I'm not encouraging you to be a brown noser. Absolutely not. I detest people who behave that way, because your value shouldn't come from who's behind you can kiss. Your value should come from you, your intrinsic value. And then what you can do, what you bring to the table, the strength of your character, your integrity. That's where your value should come from. Not how well you can flatter somebody or blow smoke up their derriere. So that's not what I'm encouraging you to do at all. So this proverb is saying, don't curse people who can hinder your progress. So don't take it to mean, all right, I shouldn't curse them. I should compliment them. I should become their best friends. No, just be honest. Just have integrity in your dealings. Be authentic. Be sincere. Stay true to who you are. You shouldn't go around cursing anybody, full stop. And I'm not saying everything is always lovely and it's all love and light and it's all kumbaya, because this world is like a box of assorted chocolates. We're not all the same. So you may have to encounter somebody who is not necessarily a kind person, and they could try you. They could really test your patience, and you have to really set them straight. As we would say in Jamaica, you put them in a them place, because them pass it. Them pass them place. Them not understand themselves. You have to set them straight. So there are situations like that could arise. Can't fault you if that is your response. My encouragement to you is simply this. Be honest in all your dealings. Have the highest of integrity. Be sincere and genuine in your relationship building. Do not befriend people for what you think they can do for you, and then have scant regard for others because you cannot readily see what value they have to you or what they can offer you. People are not objects to be used. Being used is not a nice feeling. It really isn't. And if you've been used before for whatever reason, just for a quick second, just cast your mind back to that experience. Brings up painful memories, right? Strong emotions that aren't nice to feel. So if you've been there, you've experienced that, don't do it to somebody else. Don't treat people like objects. Like this man. He needed to get across the river. The alligator was there. Alligator can swim. Takes him across, or a third of the journey. Has the audacity to curse the alligator because of his mouth. The very mouth that is taking him safely across the river. No, a man like that, you'd label him as stupid. Him stupid. Right? So don't treat people as objects. And don't curse them because they can't do for you what you want done. They don't have any value. They don't elevate your status. They can't get you to where you want to be or you think you need to be. Because if you were treated like that, I promise you, you would not like it. And at the same time, Don't allow your position in life to inflate your ego to the point where you believe you are untouchable. So you can go around treating people however you feel like treating them, because you are invincible. You are untouchable. You are who you are. You've got to where you've got to. So if I want to talk to you a certain way, I can. You don't know the limit or the reach of people. And that very person you were rude to is the person that was really sent to help you advance to your next level. And rather than create the help, what you've instead done is created a hindrance to your progress. I don't know how many of you have ever heard the story of this young man who finally got an interview to his dream job. And he was racing to get to the interview, and he saw a parking spot. And he and another driver were going for that spot. And he beat the other driver to the spot. And it wasn't enough that he beat the other driver to the spot and he parked. He was very smug about it and said something rude to the other driver because he looked over and saw it was an older man. So he was very arrogant and got out of his car and strutted into the office building, took the elevator up to, I'm going to say, the 20th floor and sat in the waiting room to do his interview. Secretary calls him in, goes into this amazing looking conference room. I mean, they're on the 20th floor, so the view is spectacular. Then he looks at the head of the table, and to his utter dismay, it's the same older gentleman who he was rude to in the parking lot. I'll leave you to imagine how that story ends. My point is, unless you have a crystal ball, unless you can see into the future, you don't know the purpose that somebody has when they come into your life. And yes, some people are there for a reason. Some people are there for a season. And you need to have the wisdom and the discernment to figure out which. You still don't know why they were sent. You don't know if it was to teach you a lesson, was to help you grow. You don't know the purpose. The person could come in the most humble and meek of ways, and that could be the biggest step up to the next level and the next phase of your life. That could be the key to unlocking the door to everything you've ever wanted, but because it came in a package that you weren't prepared for, that didn't look like anything you imagined, you reject it. And then on top of that, the very package, in quotes, that you reject turns around to become your biggest stumbling block, your biggest hindrance. Just exercise some wisdom and some discernment in how you deal with people, in how you build your relationships, in how you treat people, in how you treat yourself. When you respect yourself, you respect others. You don't have any self-respect, you cannot respect anybody else. So start with yourself first. Have a healthy level of self-respect. Commit to never talking to people out of the side of your neck. You're never going to do it. You're not going to talk to yourself any kind of way. You're never going to belittle yourself. You're always going to exercise grace and compassion for yourself. When you can do that, you can extend it to other people. Even when they are nasty and mean. Even when you want to smack them upside the head, and I don't encourage violence, only if it is in self-defense. Even when they are so nasty and so rude, you find it within you to be kind, because you don't know what that person is going through, has gone through. And all of us have our own battles and our own demons we're facing. So some days are going to be harder than others, but if you have it within you to be kind, then by all means, be kind. My beautiful souls, this was supposed to be a fun episode. This was supposed to be a light and fun episode because personal development can be fun, should be fun, should be light. Supposed to enjoy growing, enjoy learning, enjoy being better. But alas, what does? I don't know. You can let me know in the comments. You can let me know in your messages if I stayed true to the intent, which is to keep this episode light. Thank you so much for listening. Thank you for your support. It's been my absolute pleasure sticking to my word of producing weekly content. I look forward to making the episodes each week. I love the idea of personal development. If you're not growing, you are dying, and I'm not ready yet. So I'm going to keep growing, and I want you to grow with me. So thank you for coming along on this journey. I hope you're making the most of your summer. I hope you're sticking to your commitment that we made early on in July, in that you are going to go after your dreams and you're not going to care what anybody has to say or think about you and the pursuit of your goals and your dreams. It's day 24 of July. We still have a couple more days to go to the end of the month. I hope you're staying true to your promise. You can't see me shaking my finger, but I'm shaking my left index finger at the mic. I really hope you've been staying true to that promise. And if you haven't, you still have time to pick yourselves back up, brush yourselves off, and try again. That's all we can do. Alia said, if at first you don't succeed, dust yourself off and try again. You can brush it off and try again. So try again. Shout out to all the amazing countries all over the world that listen each week. It is my pleasure sharing with you. I love the fact that my message about personal development and personal growth is being heard all over the world. That's my dream, to be able to share this message all over the world, and it's happening slowly but surely. So thank you so much. Until next time, remember, there are two sides to every coin, so just flip it to get the full view, and I will catch you next week. Bye.